this is not a 5-year project. It's not really a 10-year project. It's about turning the ship around of the last 75 years of really poor decision making in urban land use. And it's going to take the rest of this century for that tree to bear all of its fruit. But the thing that I think inspires us is looking around and saying, like, but that's achievable. It is not actually absurd to envision a United States that is substantially less dependent on the car.
Hello and welcome to the War on Cars. I'm Aaron Naparstak here with a special Patreon bonus episode. Okay, so what if I told you that some of the biggest victories in the war on cars are being won not so much by bicycling and transit advocates or people and organizations focused on transportation policy. Rather, some of the most exciting and transformative developments in the war on cars these days are being pushed forward by people who are working on affordable housing. In today's episode, I'm chatting with one of those people, Matt Lewis of California YIMBY. YIMBY, of course, is an acronym that stands for Yes in My Backyard. And California YIMBY is the nonprofit organization that is fighting with pretty incredible success to build more affordable housing in America's biggest and supposedly most progressive state. Over the last few years, California YIMBY has driven the passage of a remarkable array of new laws that are finally making it possible to build multifamily apartment buildings near jobs and schools and transit. They've ended the parking mandates that for decades compelled developers to build housing for cars instead of people. And they're forcing some of the most exclusionary cities in the state of California to build their fair share of affordable housing. If you follow the California housing debate at a bit of a distance, then you may have found yourself lost in this blizzard of legislation that seems to be constantly flying around Sacramento, the Assembly Bill 2097 and the Senate Bill 9 and 471 and 1401. It kind of goes on and on. You may have found yourself puzzled over arcane and wonky terminology like floor area ratios and housing elements and builders' remedies. But even if you're confused by all of that, what is probably clear to you is just how intense this debate can be. There is a real battle underway between NIMBYs who want to maintain the mid-20th century California dream of single-family, automobile-dependent suburban sprawl versus the YIMBYs who have a very different vision for California's future. There's probably no one better to help us understand all of this than Matt Lewis. Based in Berkeley, California, Matt works as the communications director of California YIMBY. He himself is a longtime enlistee in the war on cars. I should just add that Matt and I recorded this conversation a few months ago, toward the end of 2022, but given that these issues are going to take decades to work out, everything here is still relevant. So here is my conversation with Matt Lewis of California YIMBY. Matt Lewis from California YIMBY, welcome to the War on Cars.
Thanks so much. I'm very honored to be here.
I wanted to talk to you today in part because, one of the really interesting ways that you guys are working, particularly from our perspective as the War on Cars, is, California YIMBY really seems to be breaking down silos. So housing policy people and transportation policy people often are not very good at talking to each other or working together or finding the ways in which their issues intersect. And one of the things you're doing is you're very explicitly pointing out the way in which automobile dependence is a kind of a root cause of our housing affordability and homelessness crisis in cities. So I just thought that would be a good place for us to start. How does car dependence contribute to our affordable housing crisis?
I don't really have any opinions on that question, Aaron.
Oh man, why did we have you on the podcast? I mean, honestly, if that's too big, it might be too big of a question.
No, it's not.
I just thought starting big would be good.
I think the reason it is such a critical question and why I think it's important for the war on cars to exist, to ask questions like that, and for us to try to put that question in front of as many people as we can, is while it seems obvious to nerds like us who ride bikes or what have you, it's actually just, it's so far down the memory hole of American history that people just, it's the water we're swimming in, right? People just feel like, well, you just get around in a car and you live somewhere where you have to have a car to get around. That's just life. And as you know, and as you've talked about on this show for many years now, and I've been a fan for a long time, it isn't just a caprice of nature that we ended up like this. These were deliberate policy decisions. And I think something that's exciting about the YIMBY movement and California YIMBY, where I work in particular, is pretty much to a person, we are people, YIMBYs are people who do not accept even the foundational notion that housing and transportation are two different issues. We just reject that framework completely because they're not. They fundamentally are not different. The transportation system that you build and use is a part and parcel with the housing that you build and use, and they're codependent. You do not build a freeway out to the middle of nowhere where there will be no homes.
And if you do build the freeway and you subsidize it, there will be sprawl.
We built the freeway specifically because we had decided to heavily subsidize sprawl housing. I mean, these were policy decisions. You can go back and look at them. The GI Bill provided low-cost loans to millions of Americans to buy homes in the suburbs, and then we provided the free freeway that allowed them to get to the city from the suburb. I mean, it was all a piece of the same sort of era of policymaking. Now, the forces that led to that are, the history gets deeper and more interesting and complex in a hurry. But you don't have suburbs without cars, period. They're just not a viable land use. I mean, imagine if you'd put housing, 10 miles outside of town and then said, figure out how to get to work in the city. People would be like, well, I'm not going out there.
So YIMBYs are essentially trying to reverse the last 70 years of American urban planning policy.
I think that's if you really want to distill it down, that would be the elevator pitch version. I think, though, that the mistakes that were made over the 70 years are so complicated.
You can listen to the rest of our conversation with Matt Lewis of California YIMBY by enlisting in the War on Cars as a Patreon subscriber. Membership is available for just $3, $5, or $10 per month. If you sign up, we'll send you some War on Cars stickers. And you'll have access to lots of special bonus content, including the rest of this episode. To become a Patreon member, go to thewaroncars.org and click Support Us. Or just go straight to patreon.com. Search for The War on Cars, we're there. Your support is what makes it possible for us to produce this podcast.